Yellow.
Despite our ability to repress all emotions, I think that's what my brain patient. Thanks, mister. You want to play?
All right, my clock has 4. Let's see. Can you hear me, Nathan?
Frank, we do not copy.
You don't hear me? No? You still can't hear me, Dan?
That's a little better.
I have my air conditioner on. So that's better? You can hear me now? All right, if you can hear me, let's turn on your videos if you're okay with that. More videos. There it is. Yeah. Hi, Nathan. I think you're muted.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
So welcome, everybody. let's see, Vanessa's connecting. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't filled out the little signature form on the COVID response plan on Canvas, please go ahead and do that. Everybody's going to need to do that one way or another before we leave. So if you have any issues, you want to talk about it, send me a message. Otherwise, go ahead and do it now. Anyway, other than that, I wanted to introduce Nathan McQuarrie, who has agreed to talk to us about some field desert, hot weather, cold weather, dry safety issues, so we can all be prepared and be safe out there. And so Nathan is on. Nathan, I think I've made it so that you can share your screen if you want to with that PowerPoint. Otherwise, I have it up and I can do it on mine and you can tell me.
I got it pulled up so I can go ahead and share my screen. That one. Okay, how's that?
Looks good.
Alrighty. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Nathan McQuarrie. Those of you who know Emily McQuarrie, I am her twin brother. And this is just kind of an informal medical safety briefing before you guys go out to the field this summer, because obviously there's some things to just keep in mind when you go out there. Just real quick, a rundown of my experience and credentials. I served in the U.S. Navy for 8 years as a hospital corpsman. 3 of those years I was attached to a Marine Corps infantry unit, and a cumulative year of that I was in the desert in a couple different places. So I've done this several times. Been out to the field. I prepared to go out to the field. I'm also a physician assistant student up at the University of Washington. Go Huskies. And again, this is just a really informal class. You know, this isn't something that you're going to come away with a certificate. This is just kind of to answer some questions that you may have and cover some of the more fundamental stuff. And there's going to be a big emphasis on prevention. So, and I do apologize, this is going to be death by PowerPoint, but we're going to get through this quickly, and then you guys, we'll give you guys some time to ask some questions. All right, so obviously when you guys go to the desert, it's going to be hot, it's going to be bright, and it's going to be dirty. And then in situations where you're working, you're exerting yourself in the heat, those medical issues can pop up very quickly. So that's why prevention is so important. And just to kind of bring that home, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of care. That was said by Benjamin Franklin, but that absolutely applies to medicine. I think he was talking about fire safety. So again, prevention is the key to staying away from those emergencies where someone has to get to the hospital. Okay, you know, stopping at the first sign of heat exhaustion versus getting someone into a heat stroke where they have to stay in the hospital overnight or they could die. It is so much easier to prevent illness than to treat it. So that's why we're going to cover prevention first. So before you guys leave, and I think you guys have a couple weeks to just kind of prepare everything. A couple things that I want to talk about just to make sure that you guys don't have any issues when you get there. So the first thing is adequate foot protection. You know, and we'll talk about blisters and ankle sprains later on, but right now let's talk about the boots and the socks. So you want to wear those high ankle boots if possible to just kind of stabilize your ankle when you're walking on rough terrain. And then socks, you want to avoid cotton. I put wool, merino wool down as an example. I know those are kind of expensive, but just try to avoid cotton. And then make sure to break your boots in. Walk around them every day for about an hour. You know, you can do a couple laps around the block with the socks that you'll be wearing in the field. That way you just kind of form the boots around your feet and you avoid those nasty hot spots that turn into blisters. Clothing. A lot of people get tempted, especially in the heat, to wear, you know, short pants, short sleeves to kind of help them stay cool. That's actually something that could cause issues, especially when it comes to exposure in the sun. Make sure that you're wearing long sleeves, loose fitting clothing to kind of help just keep the sweat wicking away, keep the airflow around you so that the sweat wicks away and keeps you cool. And then the light colors, don't wear black in the desert. And hats. A ball cap is probably not going to be adequate. You want to wear something that's got a brim all the way around it, because that'll cover up your ears, your face, and your neck. And if it doesn't cover up your neck, it wouldn't hurt to just bring a bandana or a gaiter or something just to cover up the skin. Okay. And a couple other things to think about. In the case of emergency, you're going to need to contact people. So make sure you get contact information from everyone before you leave. It sounds like cell phone reception is going to be pretty sparse out there. So, have a plan, a communication plan in case you can't get a hold of someone. A situation you might run into or something you might consider if you're in a group of like maybe 4 and someone goes down, you want to leave someone maybe with the person who's down and then send the pair back to go tell someone that there's an emergency. Don't have anyone go off on their own, but that's just another communication plan you guys can have as an example. Know your medical resources before you get there. Specifically, what's in your first aid kit, and do you know how and when to use it? I can't tell you how many times people will, there's a video of some soldiers in Afghanistan, and one of them gets shot, and the medic is like, oh, shoot, I don't know what to do. Let me open up my med bag. I don't know where my stuff is. That's not the time to figure out where and how to use your stuff. Okay. You want to learn how and when to use it before you go out there, so that you can avoid those big problems. Another question to ask is, where is the nearest hospital? It doesn't have to be like a top level hospital like OHSU or anything like that. The closest emergency room is really what you're looking for. If there's a community hospital in a town an hour away, and I can't remember what that town is, but maybe we'll pull it up at the end. I'm sorry?
Prineville.
Yeah, okay. And then a real quick side note, why not cotton? I mentioned it before. Cotton is very good at absorbing moisture. So in the heat, it's going to absorb your sweat, but then it's not going to let that sweat wick away and keep you cool, okay? In cold conditions, it leads to hypothermia. In hot conditions, it leads to chafing and heat injury. And those are just things you don't want to have. So that's before you get there. Now let's talk about what happens once you arrive. The most important thing when you're in a hot, sunny environment is to drink water, stay hydrated. Water is very good at regulating your body temperature. It's very important for your muscles to work properly. And if you don't have enough of it, your body's just not going to work. It's not going to maintain its temperature, and you're at an increased risk of heat injuries. Electrolytes are also very important because you're going to be sweating a lot, and with that sweat comes a lot of sodium, salt. Personal hygiene is very important. You guys are going to be working with your hands in the dirt, collecting rocks. So make sure that you try to keep your hands clean. I know that that's kind of an added emphasis with the COVID-19 situation, but it's, sometimes that goes by the wayside when you're camping. So just make sure that you guys are washing your hands when you can. Soap and water is the best. If you don't have that, just try rubbing alcohol. The biggest takeaway is that when you're working with your hands in dirt, you tend to get a lot of scrapes and cuts. And when you're not maintaining proper hand hygiene, that just increases the risk of getting an infection. It doesn't sound like you guys are going to be able to shower every day, so just shower whenever you can. Because again, just that part of that hygiene. And take care of your feet. You're going to be on your feet all day. And the single most important thing you can do is change your socks every single day. If you don't change your socks, they're going to get rough and gritty, and that's what's going to lead to cuts, scrapes, and blisters and infections. And you guys know what it's like to walk in a blister. It sucks. So, the more you can avoid that, the better off you're going to be. Bring a spare pair in case your feet just get soaking wet, and let your feet dry out every evening. Powder your feet to keep them dry in the evening. That way you can kind of avoid athlete's foot as well. Pay attention to your cell reception. Again, this goes back to the communication thing. Just know where the spotty areas are when you go out there. And if you recognize that you're in a area with no cell phone coverage, just understand that you might have to contact someone a different way. Nutrition, something I want to cover real quick, is that a lot of camping foods have a lot of sodium in them, and that can cause dehydration. One of the other things it can cause is constipation. So, people will go out to the field and they'll drink lots of water, And they'll be, they'll wash their hands and be healthy, and then they'll realize that they haven't pooped in like 3 days, and that's not good. So that's why I would suggest just bring some snacks with fiber just to keep everything regular. And just some good snapshots of your health. This is just kind of something you can look at and say, is there something seriously wrong? Or am I acting pretty healthy in this environment? First thing is your mental status. Is someone suddenly acting erratically or confused? That's an indication that there's something seriously wrong. And we'll get to some of the heat illnesses involve mental confusion. That's something that's a benchmark you can use to be like, okay, maybe this person needs to go to the hospital. Urine color and output. Your urine should be light yellow to clear. If it's clear, you could slow down on the drinking a little bit, but it should be light yellow and fairly regular. And then same thing, bowel movements, is it fairly regular? Couple other just random factoids to consider. Certain medications can cause dehydration. Benadryl is a big one. Some people take Benadryl to cover down on insect bites. That's fine as long as you're taking it as kind of a one-off thing. Some people take it on a daily basis to get to sleep. And that's where it can cause issues. When you take it on a daily basis, that can prevent you from getting adequate hydration. So just keep that in mind. The hottest part of the day is from noon to 3 p.m. So I would suggest avoiding heavy exercise during that time period. Try to stay in the shade when you can. I understand that that's not always possible. So just kind of keep in mind that you might want to hold off on physical exertion during that time. When you get sunburned, your body is not able to sweat in that area as well. And so, that's why I say cover up with your sleeves, with your neck, because anywhere you get sunburned, you're going to have trouble sweating, and that means that you're more likely to struggle with the heat. And something else is rain. So it doesn't rain very often in the desert. Those of you who have been to the east side of the state will see that when it rains, it absolutely pours. Hypothermia is very possible in a summer rainstorm if you are not adequately protected and you get wet. So the easiest way to prevent that is just to bring a raincoat. Check your skin every day is a great way to prevent infection and to check for ticks. You can check your genitals and sensitive areas when you're taking a shower. It helps to check every day. We'll talk about ticks a little bit later on. But, checking your skin just to check for rashes you didn't see the day before, or cuts and scrapes that look like they're starting to get infected, or things that you just need to keep clean. Okay, common illnesses in the desert. Most of these are going to be heat and exposure related. Heat injuries, so we'll talk about that in a sec. Exposure and sunburn, dehydration, something called hyponatremia, and then hypothermia, which we'll touch on as well. So heat injuries, this is just caused by physical exertion in hot environments. When you're exerting yourself, your body's trying to maintain a body temperature of 98.6. So there's certain physiological things that happen to keep that. If you push your body too hard, it's going to start to falter. And if you push it way too hard, the part of your brain that's responsible for controlling your body temperature is just going to shut off. It's just going to say, screw it, I'm done. And that's going to cause a positive feedback loop that causes your body temperature to just skyrocket. There's 3 types of heat injuries, from the least severe to most severe. It's just I have it listed. You have heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and then heat stroke is the really severe one. Not everyone who's struggling with the heat is gonna have heat cramps, but this is just something you might see. This is an early indication that they're struggling with heat. So take this as the warning that they need to rest and cool down and take some easy time. It's just what it sounds like. It's muscle spasms. We've all had muscle spasms or Charlie horses in the past. That's what this is, but it's because of heat. It's because their body is starting to say, okay, you're having trouble with the heat. It's exacerbated when they're dehydrated or when they've been sweating and they haven't replaced that sodium. Give them some cool water or a sports drink to replace those electrolytes, and you can lightly stretch out the muscle to kind of just relieve that tension a little bit, and then they should take it light for the rest of the day. one mistake that some people tend to do is once that heat cramp is gone, they just put them right back in the thick of it, and it just comes right back, and then maybe they get worse. So make sure that they just tend to take it light the rest of the day, so their body can recover. Heat exhaustion. So this is starting to become dangerous. Their body is working really hard to maintain that core temperature. And at this point, it's not really sustainable. So if you don't let them rest at this point, they're going to get worse. It's characterized by heavy sweating, dizziness, faintness, fatigue, nausea, headache. Once they develop mental confusion, once they don't, they start acting erratically, that's when you need to say, okay, maybe we need to get them to the hospital. Get them to a cool shaded place, give them cool water or a sports drink, and then keep an eye on them, because again, this is that point where if they don't get better, they're going to get worse. So just make sure that they are getting better. And then again, let their body heal. In any type of heat injury, their muscles start to break down, and too much of that can actually cause issues in and of itself. And giving them time to just heal up is going to minimize damage done to their muscles. All right, so the heat stroke. This is when they've been struggling for a while, and the part of their body, it's called the hypothalamus, just shuts down, and the core temperature skyrockets. So there's no more thermoregulation. Their body is just kind of doing its own thing. This is characterized by hot and dry skin, so they stop sweating. That's a big problem. Altered mental status, so again, they're confused. Rapid breathing, those are the key symptoms. And this is when they need to go to the hospital, because they cannot maintain their own body temperature. And if it goes, if it stays that way, or if it goes higher, their brain is going to die, their organs are going to die, and ultimately they're going to die. The immediate things you can do is strip them down to their undergarments and then cover them up with ice or extremely cold water. This is when you need to get their body temperature down. It's absolutely essential. And don't forget about their brain too. Get a little bandana, get it wet with some ice water, and wrap it around their forehead. And then they're going to probably get admitted to the hospital for a couple days, just to forewarn you on that one. Exposure. So any questions real quick about anything we've covered? I know I've been flying through this. Any questions so far? All right. So moving on to exposure and sunburn. We've all been sunburned at some point. It's the red, it's the red irritated skin. Sometimes it blisters, sometimes it peels. The biggest issue with it is it dries the skin up and it impedes sweating. So the most common burn sites that you're going to see are the nose, the ears, and the back of the neck. Coincidentally, that's also the 3 most common sites of skin cancer. So it helps to cover up. Easiest way to prevent exposure and sunburn: wear those loose fitting long sleeves, a wide brimmed hat, and a bandana for your neck if you can't cover that up. If you do have people with a sunburn, they make over the counter gels. And then also sunblock. I didn't mention that here, but make sure that you're wearing sunblock on anything that's uncovered. Try to keep it at like SPF 30. That's just a good benchmark to meet. And then if it's painful, they make benzocaine cream. And then drink water. So drinking water is kind of the solution to most things at this point. Hyponatremia. It's just a fancy word for you just don't have any salt in your blood. This is kind of this is the one time when you've actually had too much water to drink and not enough sodium. You're probably not going to run into this because, like I said, camping food is pretty high in sodium. You're probably not going to suffer from low nutrient levels unless you're drinking, gallons of water every day. But this can happen if you're sweating persistently. Signs and symptoms include muscle cramps, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, headache, confusion, and seizures in severe cases. This sounds like a heat injury. The signs and symptoms for those two are very similar. The treatment is actually pretty similar as well. Let them rest in the shade, give them a cool sports drink, and then let them recover for the next day. Hypothermia. So like I said, this doesn't sound like it should happen in the desert in the summertime. but it can. So when you get a heavy rainstorm coming through the summer, there's usually a cool front that comes with it. So the temperature can drop, 20 or 30 degrees when a rainstorm comes in, and then it leaves people soaking wet and freezing cold. And water, like I said, is very good at sucking the heat away from you in a cold environment. And so that's when hypothermia can start to set in. Signs and symptoms include shivering, slurred speech, drowsiness, and confusion. Once the shivering stops and they haven't warmed up, that's when it becomes an emergency. You want to remove any wet clothing, put dry clothing on them, and get them dry and warm. And the easiest way to prevent it is just to stay dry. Okay, throw a rain jacket on, and just make sure you stay dry during those rainstorms. All right, moving on to the injuries. So the key takeaway from those illnesses that we just talked about is every single one of those is preventable. As long as you take steps to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Recognize that something is bad is happening, and this person's having trouble with the heat, or maybe they are sweating profusely, or maybe in a rainstorm that they're starting to shiver. Those are things that you can do to take steps to kind of mitigate that so they don't progress into an emergency. Injuries are something that can be prevented, but once they happen, they happen. And it's, we have to cover down on how to treat those. Blisters are really the most common things. These are going to happen. You're going to get blisters, especially if your boots aren't broken in, especially if your socks are not very good. The key here is to keep your feet dry, try to break your boots in, get good socks, and that's the easiest way to prevent them. Treatment is with moleskin. You can buy this at like CVS or something, and you just cut a hole in the moleskin about the size of the blister, and you lay it across the skin. It's not a perfect fix, but it takes some of the pressure off of that blister so you can walk, and it does prevent it from rupturing. The one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to pop the blister. This is going to expose that skin underneath that's not as well protected and is a little more susceptible to infection. I've also seen plenty of instances where you'll pop the blister, and then that site just keeps on rubbing against the boot, and the blister just comes right back. And now you've lost a layer of skin, but there's still a blister. Okay, and there's a chance for infection. Oftentimes they do pop on their own, so just make sure you keep the site clean if it does pop. Ankle sprains. So most of these, so this is when you're walking on rough terrain, and again, this can be prevented by getting those high ankle boots to provide stability to your ankles. Most of these are going to be inversion sprains. So your foot rolls inward and you step on the outside of your foot, and then you fall towards that side. In severe cases, you can actually cause what's called avulsion fractures. So the ligament actually rips a part of the bone off of your ankle. That's probably not going to happen except in severe cases. Most of the time you can treat this by doing the prism. So you protect it, you rest, you ice it, you compress it, you elevate it, you mobilize, and then you medicate with ibuprofen, which is an anti-inflammatory medication. So, ice for 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off. You compress with an ankle wrap, and then you elevate it throughout the day. Don't leave the ankle wrap on overnight, though, because that can actually cause some problems with fluid buildup at the bottom of your foot and actually just make things worse. To wrap the ankle, you want to wrap from bottom to top and then in the opposite direction of the sprain. So if you roll it inward, you want to wrap it so that you pull it back to the outside. That way you're just going to stabilize the ankle and keep it from rolling inward again. Keep it mobile, don't completely immobilize it because that's going to actually cause it to freeze up and make it less stable when it heals up, so that you're more likely to get another ankle roll in the future. The easiest way to do that is just to spell out the ABCs with your ankle a couple times a day. And then treatment is 800 milligrams of ibuprofen 3 times a day for 7 days. That just kind of helps take the inflammation down, take the swelling down. And ibuprofen is an over-the-counter medication. It comes in little 200 milligram tablets, so you just take 4 of those 3 times a day for a week. Okay, bleeding. This is when that skin breaks. You've got 3 different types of bleed. You have minor bleeds, moderate bleeds, and major bleeds, and it's just what it sounds like. Minor bleeds are just, those regular cuts and scrapes that we get where blood is just oozing out. Clean the site and cover it with a Band-Aid and just keep it clean. Any break in the skin is where infection can happen, so just make sure that you keep it clean. Moderate bleeding, so this is when you maybe cut through a vein by accident. This is when you see dark blood flowing out of the vein. It's not spurting, but it's more than oozing. Put pressure on it for 5 to 10 minutes to stop the bleeding. Keep it clean, dress it with gauze, and then just make sure that you monitor it for continued bleeding. And then if it's deep and it looks like it might need stitches, bring them to the hospital. Major bleeds. So this is when you accidentally cut into an artery. This is bad. This is when you see bright red blood spurting from the wound. Okay, that's an emergency. Easiest way to do it is pressure, and then use a tourniquet if you have it available, and then get them to the hospital. So one quick thing about a tourniquet, because there's a lot of Hollywood myths about tourniquets. Belts don't work, I'm sorry to say. Tourniquets need a windlass. So you're trying to crank down on the artery to just clamp it shut. And so you need a windlass, like something that you twist to help tighten down on that artery so that it stops the bleeding. I had a tourniquet at my desk that we use in the military, and I don't know what I did with it. So I'll maybe grab that in a little bit. You can use your bandana as long as you make it the strap an inch thick. Broken bones. There's two types of fractures that you might see in the field. There's a closed fracture where the bone hasn't punctured the skin, and there's an open fracture where the bone is actually poking through the skin, or it has punctured the skin and then gone back in. If there's a break in the skin, that's an open fracture. And the biggest issue there is infection. So if there's a closed fracture, so there's no puncture in the skin, you're going to splint the bone in the shape it's currently in, and then get them to the hospital. Don't try to fix or reduce the fracture, because all you're going to do is you're going to make it worse. Remember that when a bone breaks, it's got all these really jagged points on it. And if you're trying to fix it by reducing it, all you're going to do is just move it around the arm or leg or wherever you're broken. It's going to tear apart all that tissue that's around it and just make it worse. And it's going to be very painful. It also helps to immobilize the entire limb just to keep the patient from moving it themselves and causing more damage. So if it's an arm, sling and swat the entire arm. So keep it close to their chest so they don't move it. An open fracture. So this is when the bone is poking through the skin. Don't try to push the bone back in. Don't try to move the bone. All you're going to do is rinse the site with clean water or a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and then gently pad the exposed bone with gauze just to kind of cover it up so that it gets nice and padded, so that in case they bump it on anything, it doesn't cause more injury. And then gently wrap it to secure it in place. Immobilize the limb, splint it in the shape it's in, and get to the hospital. Any questions on injuries? Okay, we're almost to the end, and then you guys can ask as many questions as you want. Real quick notes on the bugs and the critters and the creepy crawlies that you guys might run into. Insect and animal venom can cause anaphylaxis from a severe allergic reaction. That's really the big problem with insect and spider venom. And some animals also produce venom that's dangerous to everyone. So like snakes, ticks, which you might run into in the brush out there, that can cause disease. And then bites, obviously, because they puncture the skin, they can cause infection. Another one of those Hollywood myths that just seems so pervasive is sucking the venom out of a bite. Don't try to suck the venom out of a bite or a sting. You're not going to be successful. You might actually cause more damage to the site, and you could cause an infection. If you think putting your mouth over an insect bite is clean, it's not. Your mouth is disgusting and full of bacteria, and you're just going to make it worse. Anaphylaxis, so this is caused by any of several things. It's just a severe allergic reaction. So the key here, you're going to see hives all over the body, difficulty breathing, and dizziness. The difference between this and a regular allergic reaction is they're going to have trouble breathing. That's the medical emergency part of it. People who have a history of anaphylactic reactions are usually aware of it. They're usually prescribed some type of epinephrine auto-injector. They're usually called an EpiPen. If you have any people in the class that have a history of an anaphylactic reaction or have to carry EpiPens, they should teach their group how to use them, just because in case they're incapacitated, their group can use it. It's very simple. And just keep in mind that EpiPens are a temporary fix. If they have an anaphylactic reaction, they need to go to the hospital. And one quick thing about EpiPens that I just want to cover down on, it's just another one of those Hollywood myths. You see everyone in Hollywood holding the EpiPen like this, and then they jam it into their skin. You don't want to have your thumb on the back, because when you're trying to help someone out and you're not paying attention, you don't always pay attention to what direction it's aiming at. And when you jam it in, you could actually end up sticking yourself in the thumb. That actually happened with one of our guys in Afghanistan with a morphine auto-injector. He tried to give it to someone who had been wounded, and he accidentally stabbed himself in the thumb with morphine. So, you know, it's always just a good thing to make a fist and jab it straight into their skin. Bees. The biggest area of concern here is anaphylaxis. You guys do not have the Africanized honeybees, which are the killer bees. You also don't have the murder hornets, so don't worry about those. However, bees can swarm, and if you get stung by enough of them, it can actually cause a reaction. If you do get caught in a swarm of bees, run in a straight line. They're not going to chase you very far. They're only going to chase you until they don't perceive you to be a threat to their hive anymore. Don't dive under the water. I don't know how much water is out there, but if you have the option to dive underwater, don't do that. Okay, they can wait for you longer than you can hold their breath, or you can hold your breath, and they will wait for you to surface. And then, you know, the easiest way to prevent stings is just don't disturb them. If you hear a lot of buzzing, just walk in the other direction. Spiders. The only one that's medically significant is the black widow spider, which you do have in eastern Washington. These usually hide in crevices and very hard to reach places. They don't like to interact in places where humans are. So just the easiest way to prevent a bite is just don't put your hands anywhere where you can't see them. And I'm sure you guys have seen black widow spiders before. They're these big shiny black spiders with the red hourglass on their abdomen. Signs and symptoms: you're going to see pain at the bite, which is going to radiate down towards the patient's abdomen. You're going to see nausea and vomiting, dizziness, chest pain, trouble breathing. Again, don't try to suck the venom out. Just get them to the hospital. There are no other medically significant spiders. You know, you do have the hobo spider. You do have the wolf spider. Those ones, they do have large fangs and a painful bite, but they don't have medically significant venom. But their bites can cause infections, so just make sure you keep the bite site clean. Snakes. So you guys do have rattlesnakes in Eastern Oregon. These ones are really convenient because they'll warn you when you get too close. They won't just lash out at you. Again, they don't like to attack you, but they will if they feel threatened. But they're going to warn you with their rattle before attacking. Use that time to kind of back away and get away from them. If someone does get bitten, the key thing to do is keep the patient calm, because a slower heart rate will slow the spread of the venom. I know that seems really difficult to do, but just try to keep their heart rate as low as possible. Clean the wound, keep the site below the heart, because that'll kind of keep the venom from spreading too quickly, and get the patient to the ER as soon as possible. If you don't know the snake species, it's best to get them to the hospital for observation. So snake bites have, you know, a whole bunch of myths around them, from the sucking the venom out, to applying a tourniquet, to applying a cold pack, to capturing the snake. You know, this is just to kind of set the record straight. Don't suck the venom out. Don't apply a tourniquet, because all you're going to do is concentrate the venom in one area and just cause massive tissue damage in that area. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but it is better to allow the venom to dilute itself and spread throughout the bloodstream. And the best thing to do is just keep the patient calm and their heart rate low. Tourniquets could actually cause enough damage to where they need to lop off the limb. Don't apply a cold pack, because that does, you know, that bite site needs to heal. If you put a cold pack in, that reduces that healthy circulation to the site and slows down that healing process. And don't try to capture the snake, okay? If it bit someone, obviously that means it's dangerous. And trying to capture the snake, or even trying to find it to get a picture of it, that's just going to cause more people to get bitten. The best thing to do is get them to the hospital because they have the antivenom there. Okay, last two slides. Ticks. Ticks do not cause disease themselves, but they will carry bacteria that cause disease. So we have two big ticks out here. We have the deer ticks, which are the little tiny ones. Those carry the Lyme disease. And then we have the larger ones that carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever. The tick must be attached for at least 24 hours to have any big chance of spreading disease. So, getting them off soon is key. And you can tell if they've been on for a while because they tend to get very bloated the longer they stay on you. And then to take them off, use tweezers. Don't use your fingers. Use tweezers. Grasp the tick as close to the head as possible, and then pull for about 10 seconds. The tick will detach itself. Using fingers is you're probably going to rip the tick in half and leave the head in the bite site, or it might actually cause a tick to regurgitate and spill all of its bacteria into your arm or into your skin at once. And then clean the site and monitor for that classic bullseye rash of Lyme disease. If someone starts showing symptoms, get them to the hospital for treatment. So the takeaway from all of this, like I have said several times, is prevention. You can prevent most of this from happening. And the key is pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your group members, and pay attention to your surroundings, and you'll be fine. And that's all I had. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. You mentioned putting powder on your feet to keep them dry. What kind of powder should I use? Like baby powder?
Yep, just regular baby powder or foot powder. You can buy them either one at CVS.
Hey, Frank, are we going to have access to sport drink out there? Because we're probably not going to get a chance to run into town and grab it ourselves, I don't imagine.
No, we're not. We're not going to have like a lot of Gatorade, although we could look into getting.
Can we get the drink mix?
We can buy a big pack of the powder that's like a big can.
Yeah, Frank.
I need a couple of those.
Or
The
we
knockoff.
actually might be able to buy that. Hey, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, yeah. Last year there was like a big thing of like Gatorade and Powerade mix. So you can just mix it in your water bottle.
You can buy like giant packets of powder, and the cheap knockoff stuff is just as good. It just doesn't taste as good.
Yeah, but we will have that.
If you guys have any like specific scenarios that you might have questions about, feel free to ask them as well.
I do have a question about heat rashes. Is that like an indicator of like issues with like heat stroke or something?
That's more of an indication.
I know a few
that
kids last year got heat rashes.
that's just because they're sweating pretty profusely, and they're either wearing cotton shirts or just not changing their shirts every day. That happened to us when we were out in the desert. Best thing is just to kind of keep your skin dry. There is, I think, some lotion to kind of help with that, but that's not an indication that they're gonna have a heat injury. That's a skin reaction. That's not them saying that they're in heat exhaustion.
And lots of times the reason I get heat rashes is actually because of if I'm wearing a shirt of a certain fabric, my skin will be irritated by polyester or by certain types of polyester. So if you know what clothes you're going to bring out there, you might wear it a little bit ahead of time. Just make sure that you'll be okay in the heat.
It's usually caused by sweat glands getting clogged up. So it's usually just excessive sweating, and oftentimes people won't change their clothes every day. So just make sure that they're practicing proper hygiene. Something that I didn't bring up that might be useful is since you guys aren't taking a shower every day, a good substitute, an adequate substitute would be baby wipes. We use those out in the field every time we go. I bring like a pack of several hundred. And that's just a great way to kind of keep your skin clean on those days that you can't take a shower. That'll help prevent some of that heat rash.
So I had a question about the ticks. I've seen, obviously the tweezers is another thing, but I've also seen people use cards. Is that an actual effective way to remove them, or is that not recommended?
You mean like credit cards or something?
Yeah.
Or like playing cards? I mean, as long as you can get close enough to the head, I don't see why that wouldn't work. You know, tweezers are obviously the best because they're small and you can grasp a little more firmly. But I mean, if that's all you have,
I'm just making sure.
That being said, that's if someone gets stung by a bee. This is just kind of talking about having cards. Oftentimes a bee will leave their stinger in the skin, and you don't want to grab that with your fingers and pull it out because there's a little sac of venom attached to it, and you're just going to squeeze more venom into their arm. Using a credit card to kind of swipe at the stinger to get it out, that's just a good way to do that without pushing more venom into their skin.
Okay, awesome.
Nathan, will these slides be available for us to review later if we want to?
Yeah, I sent them to Dr. Souza, and so obviously they should be pretty well available.
They are currently up in the Files tab on Canvas.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm happy to help out. And like I said, if you guys have any questions that you didn't think of or you think of later, feel free to send them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Good luck out in the desert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anybody has another question, they want to chat about something, I'm
Frank,
here.
you said there was a PDF for us to download that we could sign electronically.
Correct.
Okay.
Did you see that? It should be under assignments. It's a assignment on Canvas.
Okay, it's not downloading as a PDF for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because there's a file where it has like a PDF of the signature required, but doesn't show anywhere to like sign it.
Oh yeah. So you see it under Files, Dan and Vanessa? Under Files, it says that file that says signature required. If you open it in an Acrobat, there's a signature thing. Otherwise, find some way to put your name on it. So if you're having trouble getting the little signature form to work, just print it, write your name, take a picture with your cell phone. Somebody did that. Or just open it, type your name on there, then upload it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, any way that you make that work. You should be able, for that assignment on Canvas, you can put any file type up. So. Cool. Well, if nobody else has any more questions, we'll end there, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks a lot.
See ya.
Thanks, Frank.
Bye.